So Kira, I thought I might start us off with a bit of a karakia. I know usually Marissa does a karakia, but I set myself the goal that I wanted to do one of the karakias was. So please bear with me and I'll do my very best. Ki hoa te marina, kia whakapapa punamu te moana, hei hua rahi mā tātu I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, huie tai kia. So may peace be widespread. May the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. So before I introduce myself more formally, I do want to first of all do a big shout out to you all for making it here today for the webinar. And I know I say this every time I do a webinar, but I say it because it's really important. I think often we can be quite hard on ourselves. So I just want to congratulate you for turning up today, for making this time for yourself, for your own development. I can't speak more highly of you for turning up today, and also for those that catch up on the recording. So thank you for being here. I also really want to thank the Ignite team, particularly Marissa, for bringing us all together and all the support that they show to us, bringing these webinars together, particularly picking the webinar topics to meet the needs of their clients. So I think it was maybe late last year they actually came and talked to me about doing this series on goal setting because I knew there was such a big important topic. So big shout out to the Ignite team. So a little bit about me. My name is Josie, and I've got there that I'm proudly a habits geek. And what I mean by that is that I've got a background in science and psychology because I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by the way that we learn, the way we behave. And I know that habits are the foundation of behavior change. So if you ever want to change, the best way to do that is to create a habit. It's a game changer. So that's why I'm really geeky and passionate about habits. And what I do, in addition to the role I have with Ignite, where I'm one of their providers and I do coaching there, I also have my own private practice called Spring Coaching, where I work with individuals and teams and I help them to perform their best in a way that feels sustainable for them. However they define their best, that's what I help them to achieve. Often I find that really driven, ambitious people, the sort of people that actually turn up to webinars on a Friday lunchtime, they're really good at pushing themselves. But often what I find is that with everything, there's a shadow to a strength. And what can happen is that when you push yourself too much, you end up burning out and often feeling overwhelmed and quite stressed out. So I like to help people to avoid feeling overwhelmed and stressed out. And my interest in this area of high performance and behavior change actually comes from my personal life as an endurance athlete. Unfortunately for me, I learned a very hard lesson on the importance of rest and recovery. And I found out that too much of a good thing, in my case training, actually led to me spending several months on crutches, not being able to walk. And I thought I was doing everything right by, really focusing on my training. But no, I needed to weave in some rest and recovery, which are the lessons that I bring into my coaching clients. So I've got about 20 years experience working in the corporate world, so I really understand the challenge of balancing work deadlines and still having a life. And as I say, I love understanding the why. I live in Tautuhi in Karshan with my husband and my dog, and I have a picture to share. Again, I like sharing pictures. So this is my husband and my dog. I'm not overly sure what they're looking at. He took the photo. I should clarify, when I say he, my husband took the photo. My dog is very smart, but my husband is smarter. So my husband took the photo, and yeah. So as I said, I live in Cardiff in the Wairarapa. So as I said, this is a three-part series. So this is actually our third in the session. If you've watched the previous two sessions, awesome. If not, this session will stand alone by itself. You'll still get value from it. So in that first session, which would have been about a month ago, the focus here was on how to set goals, because setting goals is really important, but there's one way to set goals and there's a better way to set goals to really set yourself up for success. So that first session was all about how to set goals that stick. The second session, which was a fortnight ago, was how do you actually do the habits that will allow you to achieve your goals? Because I personally find goal setting fun, but I know it's a whole different ballgame to set a goal and then to actually do the things that will help you achieve your goals. So a fortnight ago, we talked about how to build the systems to support the goals. And today it's going to be my favorite one. We are going to dive into how to keep going, how to keep doing the actions, the habits that will deliver your goals in the long term. Because I know life is really busy, life gets messy, and actually keeping at something is the hardest thing of all. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is this whole idea of motivation and momentum. So that's what we're going to be covering off today. So in today's session, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to do a lightning fast recap on the first two shift sessions, and it will be very, very quick. Just for those that may not have seen them, you'll be able to come in and know where we're at. Then we're going to talk about the power of the compound effect, and I'll give you a little bit of an example to demonstrate that. Then we're going to talk about why consistency over perfection wins. And it's a really key message throughout today. It's better to be consistent than to be perfect. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why it is that some people can always set goals and achieve them, and why other people struggle. So you're going to learn a little bit about yourself in this session. Then I'm going to share 2 tools that work for most people on how to boost momentum, which then allows motivation to follow. And then I'm going to share some of the most common momentum blockers and some tips and tricks to help you overcome those momentum blockers. So that's what I've got in store for you today. It is quite a full agenda, so I'll do my very best to keep us going through it and to make sure that there's time for questions at the end. And hopefully Marissa will give me a subtle nod if I go over time. You'll notice down the bottom that I've got take a bet, B-E-T, on yourself. And what I mean by that is I really want you to be open-minded. And I know that can be quite a challenging thing at times. So I might share some things with you that you already know. That's great. But often there's a big gap between knowing and doing things. I might also share some things with you that, just don't sit right with you. And that's okay too. All I'd encourage you to do is just let them sit there and just be open to them. E stands for to be engaged. So I am going to get some activities for you throughout the webinar. And these are moments for you to reflect so that you can leave the session feeling like, well, it's been interesting, also useful for you. And the best way to make something useful is to seize the day and actually apply what you're learning on the spot. It's the best way to actually get results. And then T is to take action. So yes, we're going to be doing some doing during the webinar, but then after the webinar, I really want you to take action as well. I mean, your time is precious. You've chosen to be here. Please make the most of that time by taking action following the webinar. So as I said, you are going to do some activities during the webinar. So hopefully you've got pen and paper handy so you can jot down some notes as we go, or if you prefer, you can type away. Whatever works best for you. We're all different. So let's get going. I want to start off though by defining what I mean by a goal. And the reason why I like to share this definition is because it helps to explain why goal setting, but also achieving goals is so challenging. And this is my favorite definition I've come across for a goal because it's in plain English, but it also really highlights a key point. So a goal is any desired outcome, which makes sense. If we didn't want to achieve the thing, we wouldn't set it as a goal in the first place. But it needs to be something that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. That means you need to do something different to what you do in your day-to-day life in order for a goal to happen. And that's why goals are so challenging, because they require you to do something different, and doing something different often requires a level of being uncomfortable. And let's be honest, I think we'd all much rather be comfortable. So that's why goals and achieving them is so challenging. Same for any sort of behavior change, because you have to do something different. So let's do our lightning fast recap on the key points from the previous 2 sessions. So in the first session, set goals that stick. The things that we covered were the fact that change requires action. Achieving a goal means doing something different. We also talked about how goals require 2 essential ingredients. You need to have a reason for doing it in the first place. That's the will. You need to have a why for doing it, and you need to have the how, the way to do the thing. So motivation plus a clear plan puts you there. We also talked a little bit about why goals are so important. They do bring purpose and meaning to life. And the interesting thing about goals is it's actually the pursuit of the goal, the journey towards the outcome, rather than the actual outcome, that is the thing that gives you pleasure. So that's a key thing to know about goals as well. In order for your goal to be successful, it needs to be something that matters to you. I would recommend keeping it as simple as possible, fewer than 3 goals, so keep it simple. It needs to be the right level of challenge for you. So something that challenges you, otherwise it's not really a goal if you're not doing something differently, but not so challenging that you feel overwhelmed and you can't start. It sounds a little bit like a contradiction, but you also want it to be specific. So how would you define success? How do you know once you've reached your goal? But also some flexibility, which is also a little bit contradictory there. And what I mean by flexibility is I mean a low and a high range goal. So you're more likely to achieve a goal if you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. So a common one is around losing weight. So rather than saying I want to lose 3 kilos, it could be 2 to 4 kilos. And then the biggest thing about goal achievement is actually doing something straight away. As soon as you set that goal, take the first tiny, weeny step in order to achieve it, because success breeds success. The minute you get going, the closer you are to achieving your goal. So that was the first session. The second session was all about building resilient goals. And I used the tagline, system eats goals for breakfast, because goals are the destination. They are the desired outcome. But if you don't have a system in place, you can't get there repeatedly. You might get there once, but you can't maintain it or achieve it. And so I shared a couple of tools to help with this. The first was called Goal, Skills, Practice, Action. And that was a framework to help you break a big goal down to specific action. And then I shared focus mapping, which is how to prioritize which action to focus on first. And it broke it down into helping you pick high impact and doable actions. I highly recommend checking out the recordings just to get more detail about both those frameworks. And then we talked about habit stacking, which is the idea of linking a new behavior to something that you already do daily to help kind of break down the barrier of your memory or creating something entirely new by itself. And this idea of consistency creates change, and momentum comes from what you do every day. And we're really building on that final bullet point around consistency. Consistency is going to be a key message today for you. So let's get into a little bit of fun. I have a little pop quiz for you, like I have the other couple of sessions. I'm hoping you're all familiar with your reaction buttons down the bottom. If you just scroll down with the Q&As, you'll see a little reaction button. What I'd like you to think about is if you were given the option between, and this is a great option, $3 million now, cash in the hand, do a little heart reaction. Or the second choice is, would you rather have 1 cent that doubles in value every day for 31 days? So have a moment to think and then decide if you were given the choice, or maybe a better question here is, what's going to give you the most money? Would you choose $3 million cash in the hand now, or would you pick 1 cent that doubles in value every day for 31 days? So I've seen a couple of hearts, so some people are wanting the cash now. You can also see a couple of people wanting 1 cent that doubles. Oh, actually, it looks like it's about an even split so far. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds to see what else we get. I need a tiebreaker. Okay, no tie. Oh, okay, there we go. 1 cent that doubles in value. Okay, awesome. So let's find out which one is going to give you the most cash. So here we have the 2 lines. So the red line is that $3 million. And I've just done it as a straight line right across 31 days. Realistically, for anything like me, you probably spent some of them 3 million over the course of the 31 days. So you probably won't end up with 3 million at the end of the month, but I'm being generous. So I'm saying end of month, you've still got 3 million. Somehow you have not spent a cent on a mochaccino. The purple line, now that is the interesting one. That's the one where you're getting 1 cent every day that's doubling. Now, when you look at it, it kind of looks a bit rough because for the longest time, it's kind of stays flat. So if we were to kind of drill into this chart a little bit more, at day 5, you've got 16 cents and yet your mate has 3 million. That kind of sucks. Day 10 is not much better. You don't even have enough money to buy a mochaccino. You've got $5.12. Day 20 is starting to get a little bit better, but still well below that 3 million of your mates. You've got 5,243. But then things start to change. Around day 26, suddenly you jump up to 335,544. Day 30 is where things get really good, and now you're kind of secretly chuckling, thinking, ha ha ha. You've got 5 million, over 5 million. And look at what happens at day 31. You have over 10 million, nearly $11 million. So for those that picked the 1 cent that doubles every day, you're going to end up with more cash. And now this isn't going to be a webinar on investment and how to spend your money, but the key point I want you to get from here is this idea of the compound effect, that small little things add up over time. And for a long time, it can feel like you're making no progress at all until suddenly, voila, things get really, really good. So that's a really key message throughout today's webinar, is this idea of small things add up and this compound effect. Of course, the difficulty is that this takes time, and we like results quickly. That's why it takes so much effort to keep at things for a long period of time, because for the longest time you can feel like you're not making progress towards your goal, and it can be easy to lose faith. So I guess again, the message here is to trust the process, know that small things do add up. So I want to share this quote with you, and if you've ever had a to-do list that you just haven't got through, this will ring true for you. So most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So often when we think about what we can do in the short term, we overestimate. We think we can achieve a lot more than we can actually do. But when we look back and we look at how much we've achieved over, say, a decade, because of that compound effect, that exponential curve, it's massive. So always think about the long term. You may be familiar with the marshmallow experiment as well, where they had children, they gave them a single marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows later on. It's the idea of waiting for the bigger return. So why small improvements matter? So you've got that chart there again showing that compound effect. And a really good book, if you're interested in this sort of idea, is the book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. So we underestimate what consistent actions achieve over time. And that's because we're conditioned to think we need to do big, big, amazing things to get results. But actually it's the small things, it's teeny, teeny, weeny things that deliver results. Remember that 1 cent that doubles. So success isn't about bursts of motivation. It's the repeatable, almost boring actions that deliver the biggest results. And I'm going to share some words from one of my clients because she articulated it better than I ever could. At the end of one of our coaching sessions, I said to one of my clients, what was most useful for you today? What, has really stood out for you? And she said, when I look back over the sessions we've had together, we haven't done anything earth-shattering, but the results, it has been earth-shattering. It's this idea of little things that add up over time. You may be familiar with the activewear brand LSKD, and they have this tagline that comes from Atomic Habits from James Clear, of this idea of 1% better every day. This idea that small daily improvements compound over time. So that if you pick something that you want to work on, say the goal that you may have defined in our first session together, that you built the system around in our second session, if you look to be 1% better at that action, the skill, the practice that you're building, by the end of the year, you'll be 38 times better at it. So although progress feels slow at first, just like our 1 cent coin, momentum does grow. And for those people like me who like to check things and really understand the why behind things, the formula to use here would be 1.01, because it's 1%, to the power of 365. So it's exponential, and that will give you 37.78. I'm a little bit of a geek, as I said. So what does that all mean? So I mentioned earlier that consistency over perfection is key. So one of the things that I'm doing in my private life at the moment is I'm relearning Japanese, and I've been using Duolingo to learn it. And you'll see that unfortunately for me on Tuesday, I actually missed my day and I broke my streak. Now, what I could have done is I could have thought, right, my streak's all over, I might as well give up. But actually, I thought if I keep going, that the one little day of missing doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. It's more important that I keep doing it. I'll still get to where I want to be. So this idea that you don't have to be perfect in order to get ahead and to succeed. Consistency beats intensity. 80% effort will still deliver results. 70%, 60%, 50%, anything is better than zero. Anything you do will still deliver results. So small repeatable actions win, and by far it's better to do regular small bursts than one big burst. Remember, 3 million versus 1 cent. So focus on direction, not perfection, and keep moving forwards. Another thing you're going to hear a lot in this webinar is this idea of bouncing back with kindness, to treat yourself with compassion. So I could have beaten myself up about missing my Tuesday lesson, but instead I realized that it was a really busy day for me. I had a lot going on, and I'm not surprised that I forgot to do it. By acknowledging that, I was able to pick myself back up and continue on Wednesday, and that meant that I didn't lose my streak altogether. It was just a streak freeze. So don't aim to be consistently great, aim to be great at being consistent. And it's a lovely quote from Brad Stulberg from the book, I've got it here for you, Peak Performance. Highly recommend this book as well if you're into this sort of topic. So one of the key lessons from the book Atomic Habits, and when it comes to habit formation, is to realize that it's not about missing once, like missing my Tuesday at Jalingo. It's about the pattern that can be created. So the first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It's a spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. So missing once is an accident. It's life. It happens. Don't beat yourself up. Pick yourself up and move on. Missing twice, that's the start of a new habit. And so something I always say to people when they're looking to build a habit is, if you miss once, it's okay in the grand scheme of things. Just try not to miss twice in a row. It would be like if you're plotting a chart with points, 1 point off the line is an outlier. When you start to get 2, it starts to move the shape of the line. So missing once is okay. Try not to miss twice in a row. So you may have noticed that some people are really good at sticking to new habits or sticking to the New Year's resolutions, and other people not so good. Often that comes down to how people respond to expectations. And so I want to very quickly share a framework with you that'll help you understand yourself a little bit better. And by knowing this about yourself, you can then pick strategies and tools to help you succeed when it comes to building new habits and ultimately reaching your goals. So this comes from a framework called the 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. And she recognized that how you respond to expectations matters. And knowing this means that you can tailor goal strategies and maintain momentum. So she recognized that there are 2 different types of expectations. There are the expectations that someone sets upon us, like work deadlines, requests from a friend or family member. And then there are the things that we set for ourselves, our inner expectations, so our own desires to keep a New Year's resolution, our own desire to go for a daily walk or to learn Japanese. They are the internal expectations, and how we respond to those can roughly be categorized in 4 different quadrants. Now, by far the biggest grouping are called the obligers, and these people are 41% of the population. These people are predominantly my clients, and they form the backbone of society. They make the best boss, family member, friend, team player, because they are phenomenal at meeting outer expectations, but they struggle with inner expectations. So if you're the sort of person where you may say to yourself, I'm going to go out for a lunchtime walk, and then your boss needs you, you'll skip your lunchtime walk to do what that other person needs you to do. So their superpowers, and every tendency has superpowers, is that they are the team player. They're responsible. They're willing to go the extra mile. But with strengths, there's always the shadow. So these people can be susceptible to burnout. They can become resentful. And what can happen, and this is true for all tendencies, you'll notice in that diagram to the side that there's a little bit of an overlap. So when obligers get stressed, they can fall into the rebel quadrant where they can become self-sabotage. When it comes to habits, obligers, again, the biggest group of us, need external accountability in order to maintain the habit. Our second group, the questioners, their mantra, if you're an obliger, is you can count on me and I'm counting on you to count on me. So they need that external accountability. Our second group are our questioners, so about a quarter of the population. They question everything. You can probably guess which group I fall into. So they will question all expectations and only meet them if they make sense. That means that they're typically very good at meeting internal expectations because they understand why they're doing it, because they've decided to do it. Not so good at meeting external expectations unless they understand why. So their superpowers are that they tend to be internally directed. They're very data driven, and they can be okay with bucking the system as well because it has to make sense. The shadows, analysis paralysis, being that person that keeps on asking why, and difficulty with closure. So in terms of habits, it's fine if they can see the logic and benefit behind it. If they can see it, then all good. Their mantra is, I'll comply if you convince me why. The third group. Now, this is the sort of person that if they're driving down a country road at 2 a.m., there's no cars around, but for whatever reason, there's a red traffic light, they will stay there until that traffic light turns green, because these people are fantastic at meeting all expectations, outer and inner. Their superpowers are that they're self-motivated, conscientious, and they stick to schedules. These are the sorts of people that would excel in high disciplined, regimented roles. But the shadow is that they can be a little bit defensive, a little bit inflexible, rigid, and they can be quite demanding. In terms of New Year's resolutions and habits and behaviour change, they're the ones that are most likely to stick to them. And their mantra would be, discipline is my freedom. And last, but certainly not least, are our rebels. These people really struggle with all expectations. These people tend to be really independent, spontaneous, they're creative, they're unswayed by conventional wisdoms. But the challenge they have is that they can be seen as uncooperative, and they can struggle with routines and plans, and they can become restless. So when it comes to habits, they tend to resist them if they feel like they're restricted. So for them, they need to make the choice to do the habit. It needs to feel like spontaneous and a choice. So oughta, shoulda, oughta, wanna, coulda sort of things don't work for rebels. They need to decide for themselves. And they're by far the smallest group. So listening to me describe those 4 tendencies, you may feel like you already know where you fit in, but in case you want to explore this further, their mantra is, you can't make me and neither can I. So as I was saying, if you want to find out what your tendency is, I'm going to pause for a few minutes and let you work that out for yourself. There's 2 ways that you can do this. You could scan the first QR code, and I believe Marissa's going to drop the link into the chat as well, and that will take you to Gretchen Rubin's online quiz. Now the caveat with this is that you need to drop in your email address to get the results. If you don't want to do that, that's cool. What I've done is I've created a paper copy for you, but that means that although you don't need to give your email address, you need to do manual scoring. So let me give you a couple of minutes just now to choose either option and work out what your tendency is. It's a very quick quiz, I think maybe 13 questions, so quite quick to do, but it can be really valuable knowing which one. And probably once you've done it, you'll start to work out what your spouse and family members and friends all fit into as well. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now to do that. There's one more minute, because I know that for those doing the paper base, it can take a little bit of time to kind of count all the things up. Hopefully you're not taking the questions too seriously and just kind of going with one that feels the best fit for you. Okay, let's carry on. So if you haven't had a chance to work out your tendency, that's okay. Hopefully you have a bit of a feel about which one you may fit into, and hopefully you can come back to it later. So now that we have that awareness of what our tendency is and how we respond to expectations, we can now think about how can we use that knowledge to help us with momentum and motivation. Because so often my clients say to me, I'm broken, I have no willpower, I have no motivation. And that's not the case at all. These are amazing, incredible people. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just about knowing the right tools and techniques to help you. So I've got one slider to kind of summarize it, and then we'll go through a couple of tools to help most people. So here we go. So obligers, they move fastest with accountability. And can I say that's the case for most people? So accountability is key for our largest group of people. Our questioners move fastest with a clear why. So tools like the 5 Why from Toyota, where they look at the root cause, that can be a really great tool. And that's, you remember they talked about how goals have 2 ingredients, a why and a how. Whys are really important to questioners. Upholders, they're pretty good anyway at sticking to habits, but they do move fastest with clear structure and routine. So I'm going to share one of those tools with you in a moment. And as I said, rebels achieve habits best when it feels like that goal is a choice rather than something being forced on them. So just keep that in mind, and again, think about which tendency you feel like you fit into, and then I'm going to share some tools and techniques to help. So I want to dive into accountability because, as I said, it's the thing that helps the largest group of people, and it's the thing that helps most people out there. So there was a very comprehensive study done from the American Society of Training and Development, and they wanted to find out the likelihood of success using different tools and techniques. So if you have an idea or a goal, they found that you're 10% likely to follow through and do it. 10% is not very high, so they figured we can do better. They worked out that if you make a conscious decision to do it, so particularly good for those questioners, that boosts your likelihood of success up to 25%. If you give yourself a timeline, 40%, that's where the kind of upholders are coming in. Make a detailed plan, even better, 50%. If you tell someone you trust and respect, that jumps up to 65%. But even better, if you tell someone you trust and respect, and you have a specific time to check in with that person, you're 95% likely to succeed and do that thing. Now, if this is of interest to you, I do have a blog that goes into a lot more detail. It has also the link to the study, but it also has some more information for you. So if you're interested to know more about accountability, I recommend checking out that blog, and you can access it via that QR code. So accountability is a key thing for everyone, so powerful in fact that Bob Proctor decided to describe it as the glue that ties commitment to the result. The second thing I want to share with you is this idea of tracking. So again, a little story from my personal life. I have been doing the push-up challenge where if you sign up, you do 2,000 push-ups in 23 days. Today is day 23. I'm halfway through the target of 100, sorry, I'm over halfway, I'm 2/3 of the way through the target of 150. But you can see that there's lots of ways to track your progress. So these are from my screen. So you can see that on the day, you're tracking all the push-ups that you're doing. Over the course of the week, you're tracking how you're going against the goals. Day 18, by the way, was a rest day. That's why there's no push-ups there. I wasn't slacking off. It was a set rest day. And you can also see it that way as well. So this is the idea of tracking habits, tracking actions. So what this does is it provides visible progress. Every time you do it, you tick it off, it's a win. And of course, as we know, small actions compound and consistency is key. Of course, when it comes to tracking, we are busy people. Less is more. So it can mean you only have 1 or 2 things that you're tracking. Otherwise, it can get a little bit boring tracking all of these millions of habits. So only pick 1 or 2. You can also use tracking to look for patterns and adjust if you need to. So if you find that one day you're better at doing the thing than another day, have a think about what were you doing on that day that made it easier to do, and vice versa. If there's one day when you really struggled to do the action, what was going on that day? And you want to create the environment that best sets you up for success. And then celebrate the wins. Momentum grows when we feel like we're winning. So all winners are trackers, and that's a quote from that book, The Compound Effect, from Darren Hardy. There's a QR code there that takes you to another blog that I've written about the power of tracking. And also within that blog, if you wish, there's a link that will take you through to a tracker. It's an annual tracker that you can print off and keep track by habit. So that's there for you if you'd like it. So as I said, this is a quote from the book, The Compound Effect. Track every action that relates to the area of your life you want to improve because all winners are trackers. So 1 minute here, I want you to think about what you've learned so far about who you are and your tendency, and think about a support strategy for you. Maybe it's accountability, in which case, if you think about a goal that you have or an action or a habit that you're wanting to strengthen, who's someone that you can tell? When will you tell them? When will you meet up with them? And how are you going to celebrate wins? If tracking is your thing, particularly good for questioners and the upholders, which habit do you want to track? How often are you going to track it? And how are you going to celebrate your wins as well? So maybe 30 seconds to just have a little bit of an individual reflection here. Okay, let's keep moving. We're now coming up to our final section, which is all about how to beat the most common momentum blockers. So, big one is forgetting. So, if you find that you're a person that forgets to do the thing, I encourage you to act immediately as soon as it comes to mind and then resume that action at the next scheduled opportunity. So, just like I did with missing my Japanese lesson, I did it straight away once I realized I'd forgotten it, and then I did it again at my usual time that I would do my Japanese lesson. Pair the habit with an existing daily routine. This is what habit stacking is all about. And skip the guilt. Just accept it, be compassionate to yourself, acknowledge that life is busy, and move on. Life gets busy, family, work, and travel. So I often think of life as having multiple little dials, and maybe put a dial for your family, a dial for work, a dial for other hobbies and recreation. You get to choose when you dial those aspects of your life up or down. So if you know that you're going to be really busy at work, maybe you choose to dial down the action that you've set yourself to do, and you give yourself permission to do that. Maybe other times it's less busy on home front and you can dial up that action. So I've got there, set yourself a minimal viable product, use the marketing term. Decide what is your minimal acceptance of that particular action. For example, if your thing is to usually go for a 20-minute walk, maybe it's just to walk around your block. And then set a clear timeline for you to return to that habit if it interrupts, so you can get back on track and skip the guilt. It's going to be a recurring thing. You lose interest. So what I recommend there is to really reconnect with your deep why. So use the 5 why technique that I've already mentioned. And if it's still important, maybe it's just not the right action that you're doing. Maybe you need to change the habit that will get you towards that goal. And you can use that goal, skill, practice, action framework or else focus mapping to help you work that out. Again, check out the second seminar for that one. If you decide that's not important to you anymore, awesome, that's great. Pivot, do something that is meaningful and skip the guilt. A big one, particularly, when life gets busy, low energy or you're too tired. What I recommend here is to commit to just 5 minutes, because often we wait to feel in the mood. But the thing is, motivation doesn't come first, action comes first. So you have to do something in order to feel motivated. So try doing it just for 5 minutes or 2 minutes if 5 minutes feels too big. If you still feel like doing it, and you probably will, keep doing the thing. If you decide that actually, after 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you don't, stop. At least you've started. Now, I had a client that I was working with, and she wanted to get up early and exercise in the morning, but often her alarm would go off and she'd feel too tired. And so what I suggested we do is that she set herself an energy threshold that when she woke up, she would give herself a rating at between 1 to 10. If that number was higher in terms of her tiredness than her threshold, then she would give herself the permission to have a lie-in because clearly she needed the rest. If it was less than her threshold, then she would count to 5 and she would go. Again, it was predetermining what was her limits. And again, skip the guilt and get back on track. Sometimes we can be doing something and we don't see progress. Remember that 1 cent coin, it took forever to build. Manage expectations. Understand that success isn't linear, it's exponential, it compounds. I also like to remember the rule of thirds, which comes from the Olympian Alexia Papsis. She said that whenever you're chasing a big, all-important, hairy goal, a third of the time things are going to be going well. They're going to be good. A third of the time it's going to be okay. But unfortunately, this is the way life goes. A third of the time it's actually going to feel crappy. And understand that success isn't easy. Pursuing goals is not easy either. It's challenging. That's what makes it a goal. So a third of the time it's going to feel good, a third of the time okay, a third of the time, yeah, not so fun. I'd also recommend if you've been doing this and you feel like you're not making progress, you're not seeing any kind of momentum towards where you're heading, maybe you need to select a different action to focus on. Maybe you pivot and do something else and skip the guilt. And then finally, sometimes you can set the goal, you can pick the right action, but you can't start. And often that's because the thing that you have set for yourself is just too big to begin with. So shrink that habit down, make it even smaller. Again, that goal, skill, action, sorry, should be practice action framework can help with that. Whenever I'm working with a client and they set themselves an action to do, I'll always say to them, how confident are you that you can do that thing successfully? Because I want to set them up for success. If they say anything beneath a 9, I ask them, what are the barriers? What are the things that make them feel unsure about doing it? We either try and break down those barriers or we make that step smaller until they are at least a 9 out of 10 confident they can do it. Because I want them to win. I want them to be successful. So you need to make sure that that thing is so small that you can do it. And again, consider your deep why and skip the guilt. So let's do a quick reflection and then we'll do our wrap up. So I want you to think about those common momentum blockers that I mentioned, things like forgetting. I know I can walk into a room and forget why I've walked in the first place. Busy life, low energy, lose interest, lack of progress, and can't start. And then think about some of the strategies that I've described and pick one that you think will help you beat that blocker and just write that down. That's something that you can come back to after today's webinar and just test it out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, it's okay. Try something else. Be a scientist. Keep trying until you find something that works for you. So I'll give you 30 seconds just to reflect on yourself. Okay, so I'm hoping now what we've achieved is everyone has an idea of what their tendency is and what that means for how they manage expectations and also habits. That everyone now has a support system that they can use, whether it be accountability or tracking or something else, that you've been able to build awareness around what you think might be getting in your way, that momentum blocker, and hopefully a strategy that you can use to beat that blocker so that you can build that action consistently. Remember, consistency is key, small steps pay off. So let's go through the key points I want you to get from today's webinar. The first one is this idea of small wins add up. That lovely tagline, 1% better each day, that compounds into big results. Remember my client that said we're not doing anything earth-shattering, but the results are earth-shattering? That's the power of small steps done consistently. To think about progress over perfection, think about the direction, not the flawless execution. Remember, I missed a day of my Japanese Duolingo. That's okay. I just pick back up and I'll still get to where I want to be. Know yourself, know your tendency, how you respond to expectations, and by doing so, then tailor your strategies to suit your style. Every tendency has a strength. It's just knowing what you are and then working within that. Use support systems. Set yourself up for success. Get help. Accountability and habit tracking are two things that work for most people. And in case you didn't get that message woven throughout, Please practice self-compassion. There are lots and lots of studies out there that actually shows that those people that are most self-compassionate perform the best because they are able to bounce back from setbacks. They are able to keep progressing to where they want to be when they are kind to themselves. So be kind to yourself. That will help you bounce back quicker. And if it helps, talk to yourself like you would a best friend. So if your best friend skipped a day, would you tell them that they sucked? No, you wouldn't. You'd say, that's okay, you were busy. Pick up tomorrow. So please treat yourself the way you would your best friend or a small child. So I'm going to finish there and open it up for any questions. If I've covered anything in particular that you want to know more about, please feel free to get in contact with me. You can book a session, email, connect with me over LinkedIn. Wherever your places that you like to hang out, I'm there. Connect with me. So what I might do is stop sharing so I can see you all better. And are there any questions for me?
Good, Josie. Thank you for that. I really love
Sure.
what you said at the end about, talk to yourself how you'd talk to your friend or a small child. I think that, we often forget that, don't we?
We're so mean
Um,
to ourselves.
I know, yeah. Cool. So I've got a question. Can you change your tendency? So if you've identified today that you're a rebel, but you want to be more like an upholder, like, can you change that, or is that something that's just kind of set in stone?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think you can train the tendencies of the tendency through practice and discipline. I do know that when you're under stress or if you're acting a certain way, sometimes we can go on holiday in a different tendency. So I talked about the obligers when they can start to feel resentful, they can get a little bit kind of almost self-sabotaging and become rebels. And it's the same with the questionnaire. Sometimes we can move into that rebel space. We can move around depending on what's going on in our life. So I think sometimes the tendencies we display in our tendencies can feel different to what we truly are when we're not being our authentic selves, if that makes sense, when we're not being our truest person.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
That's like it's a good
Um,
question.
Somebody said in the quiz I came out even for an obliger and a rebel. Does that mean I'm more one in personal and the other in professional lives?
That's a really good question too. What Gretchen Rubin has suggested when that does happen, because it can happen, is for the person to pick the tendency that they feel best represents themselves, because ultimately we know ourselves best. It is only a quiz. In fact, for the people that did the paper version, there's an additional question around, do you question the accuracy of this quiz? Um, so it is just a quiz. You know yourself best. It may be that under stress, you're more of a rebel. When you're feeling more relaxed and your best self, you might be more of an obliger.
Mm,
So whatever that person feels best represents them.
great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Good question.
Another one, how can you communicate your goal tendency, whether it's rebel or another type, to the people in your life, such as like your boss or partner, so they can better support you in achieving your goals?
That's a really good question. I would recommend probably just sharing what works best for you. So saying, I'd really love to be able to do this to the best of my ability. To help me achieve that, could you please explain the reason why I'm doing this, or help me honour the time commitments that I've made to myself, because I'd really like to be able to go out for a lunchtime walk. In order for me to do that, could I please block out the time and we keep that time sacred for me? Something like that. So, as much as possible, if you feel comfortable sharing, share what works for you with the person, because I'm yet to find someone that can read my mind. And I'm guessing it's the same for you. So, people aren't mind readers. Sometimes we just need to tell them what works for us, even if it's uncomfortable.
Well, awesome. Is there any other questions? Feel free to type them in the Q&A. I have one, it's not fully formed, so bear with me, but for people who may be quite literal thinkers, um, for using the example of your Duolingo streak, 200, I think it's 240 something days or something you were going, like for literal thinkers, like they might not be able to say, I've done 242 days straight of Duolingo because they've had a couple of street freezes in there. Like,
Mm.
how do you sort of manage that for those literal thinkers where, they've still done it for most of the time, but they feel they can't say, I've done this for this many days because of that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think it comes down to the why behind the thing that you're doing it. So I'm using Duolingo because in September I'm going to Japan and I want to be able to, as much as possible, use a few words so I can communicate with the locals and show that I've tried and made an effort. For me, that's more important than keeping my streak. And saying that, it did hurt a little bit, and so that's why I was so quick to do it. But ultimately, I know that even though I missed that Tuesday, and yes, it wasn't great, and there was a little bit of me that's like, well, what's even the point? Maybe I should just give up now. I still knew that if I gave up now, then my knowledge of Japanese when I'm in Japan will be less than if I just cut myself some slack, pick myself up, and continue on. Does that
Gotcha.
help to answer your question? It's a
Yeah,
good question.
yeah, it does. Thank you. Cool. Is there any other questions from anybody? If not, I might hand it back over to you to close us off.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen and I'll get you to do our final karakia.
Cool.
Over to you.
Cool, thank you. Mā te rongo ka mōhio, mā te mōhio ka marama, mā te marama ka mātou, mā te mātou ka ora. Through listening comes awareness, through awareness comes understanding, through understanding comes knowledge, through knowledge comes life and well-being. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for those that are watching it at home later on. Thank you for being there and for investing in yourself.